The water suddenly exploded around our patrol boat, sending splinters of wood and shrapnel into the humid air. I ducked instinctively, my helmet clanging against the steel hull as the second blast rocked our vessel. American landing craft. Sergeant Tanaka shouted above the chaos, his face streaked with sweat and salt water. They've come for us. I clutched my Type 99 rifle tighter, my knuckles wide against the wooden stock. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on Makin Atoll, but a cold dread settled in my stomach. This was it, the moment we had trained for, the moment our commander had promised would be our glorious death for the Emperor. But as I watched the horizon fill with enemy vessels, a different thought crept into my mind. Would I really die here, on this tiny speck of coral in the middle of the Pacific? August 17, 1943. My name is Hiroshi Tanaka. Though my comrades call me Tanaka-kun, I am a soldier in the Imperial Japanese Navy's Special Naval Landing Force. Stationed on Makin Atoll for the past 7 months today marks the 665th day since the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the 237th day since our unit arrived here to defend the strategic atoll. I arrived on Makin in January 1943 as part of the reinforcement detachment sent to bolster the small garrison. At that time, the atoll was home to approximately 300 Japanese troops, mostly Navy personnel with some Army support. Our commander is Lieutenant Junior Grade Seizo Ishikawa, a stern but fair man who has drilled into us that surrender is not an option. Death in battle is our only honorable path. The past few months have been a cycle of routine and dread. Each day begins at 4:30 a.m. with reveille and calisthenics. After breakfast, we spend hours drilling with our weapons, mostly Type 99 rifles, a few Type 96 light machine guns, and some Type 11 light machine guns. The afternoon is reserved for digging trenches and fortifying our positions around the airfield and the main administrative buildings. The heat is unbearable. Even in the shade, temperatures rarely dip below 90 degrees. The humidity wraps around you like a wet blanket, making every task exhausting. We've grown accustomed to the constant presence of sand fleas and the occasional rat that ventures into our camp. Fresh water is scarce. We collect rainwater when we can and supplement it with coconut milk, which has become a staple of our diet. Yesterday, Commander Ishikawa called all troops to attention. The Americans are coming, he announced, his voice grave. Their fleet has been spotted approaching from the east. We must be ready. Remember your training. Fight to the last man. Show them the spirit of Japan. The men around me murmured in agreement, but I noticed several exchanged worried glances. We had heard stories about American firepower. Their naval guns could pulverize our positions from miles away. Their aircraft could bomb us into oblivion. Our Type 95 Hago tanks were no match for their newer models, and our artillery consisted mostly of outdated mountain guns. As night fell, we doubled our guard rotations. I took the midnight to 4 watch, scanning the darkness for any sign of enemy activity. The stars were unusually bright that night, and I found myself thinking of home, my wife Yumi, our daughter Sakura, and the small farm we had in northern Honshu. Would they ever know what became of me? Would they even care? August 18, 1943, the attack came at dawn. Just as Commander Ishikawa predicted, but not in the way we expected first. We heard the distant rumble of aircraft. Then came the whine of bombs falling from the sky. The explosions shook the ground and sent plumes of dirt and coral into the air. I was in my trench when the first bomb hit the administrative building, showering us with debris. Take cover, Sergeant Tanaka shouted, pulling me into the trench just as another bomb exploded nearby. The air raid lasted nearly an hour. By the time it was over, our main headquarters was a smoldering ruin, and several of our machine gun positions had been destroyed. We lost 12 men in the initial attack, mostly those caught in the open or in the buildings that were hit. We must prepare for the landing, Commander Ishikawa said, his face blackened with soot. They will come ashore soon. Be ready. An hour later, we spotted the American landing craft approaching the beach. Dozens of them, packed with what looked like Marines. As they hit the shore, the ramps dropped and men in khaki uniforms began streaming out, their rifles raised. "Open fire," Lieutenant Ishikawa commanded. Our remaining machine guns roared to life, spitting deadly fire toward the beach. I lined up my rifle and took aim at one of the Americans who was crouched behind a palm tree. I squeezed the trigger, and he fell. But more kept coming, advancing in organized waves, their weapons spitting fire in our direction. The Americans were different from what I had expected. They moved with a purposeful confidence that I hadn't seen in our troops. They worked together, covering each other as they advanced. Their weapons seemed more advanced than ours. Several of our men fell before we even knew where the shots were coming from. We fell back to our secondary positions, taking up defensive spots around the airfield. The fighting was intense now, close quarters combat with bayonets and hand grenades. I saw Lieutenant Yamamoto go down, his chest torn apart by what must have been an American Thompson submachine gun. Sergeant Tanaka was hit in the arm, but continued fighting, his face a mask of determination. By noon, we had lost nearly half our men. The Americans had established a firm beachhead and were pushing inland. Commander Ishikawa gathered what remained of us, about 50 soldiers. "We must make a final stand," he said, his voice resolute. "There is no retreat. We will show these Americans what it means to face Japanese Algiers." We positioned ourselves among the coconut groves, using the trees for cover. The Americans advanced cautiously, their weapons at the ready. As they came closer, we opened fire, catching them in a deadly crossfire. Several fell, but they kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. I fired shot after shot, my rifle growing hot in my hands. I saw an American officer fall, and for a moment I felt a surge of hope. But then more took his place, and the advance continued. Suddenly, a tremendous explosion shook the ground. One of our remaining machine gun positions had been hit by what must have been an American mortar. When the dust settled, I could see that half our remaining force had been killed or wounded. Commander Ishikawa stood up, drawing his sword. "For the Emperor," he shouted, and charged toward the Americans. Several of us followed, screaming battle cries as we ran toward the enemy fire. I felt bullets whizzing past me, tearing through my uniform. One hit me in the shoulder, spinning me around. I fell to the ground, the pain searing through my body. As I lay there, watching the battle rage around me, I saw Commander Ishikawa fall, multiple bullets piercing his body. The remaining Japanese soldiers fought on for a few more minutes, but it was clear the battle was lost. By late afternoon, the shooting had stopped. I was lying in a pool of my own blood, unable to move. Around me, the bodies of my comrades lay scattered, some peaceful in death, others contorted in agony. The Americans moved among us, checking for survivors. One of them approached me, his rifle pointed in my direction. I braced myself for the end, but instead of shooting, he said something in English. I didn't understand the words, but I recognized the tone. It was not that of a killer, but of someone assessing a situation. He gestured to another American, who came over and began examining my wound. They worked quickly, applying a field dressing and giving me water. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The American who had first approached me said something else, then pointed toward the beach. As they carried me away, I looked back at Makin Atoll, my home for the past 7 months. The palm trees that had provided us with shade now stood as silent witnesses to the destruction. The airfield, which we had defended so fiercely, was now in American hands. I thought of my family, of the life I had left behind. Would they ever know what had become of me? Would they understand that I had fought with honor, even if we had lost? As darkness fell, I was placed on a landing craft with other wounded Japanese soldiers. The Americans treated our wounds as best they could, though their medical supplies seemed limited. I watched as the atoll grew smaller in the distance, the fires from the battle still burning on the horizon. August 19th -20, 1943. The next 2 days passed in a haze of pain and confusion. We were taken to a makeshift hospital on a nearby American ship. The medical staff worked tirelessly to treat our wounds. Though their resources were stretched thin, I learned from one of the orderlies that we were being taken to a POW camp in the Hawaiian Islands. The news surprised me. I had been taught that Americans routinely killed Japanese prisoners, but these men had shown me nothing but kindness and respect. On the third day after the battle, I was questioned by an American intelligence officer. He asked me about our garrison, our defenses, our plans. I answered as honestly as I could, omitting nothing of military significance, but avoiding any details that might endanger my remaining comrades. The officer seemed satisfied with my answers. "You fought bravely," he said in broken Japanese. "But this war is lost for Japan." I didn't respond. How could I? The words seemed to contradict everything I had been taught, everything I had believed. August 21st, 1943 today, I was transferred to a larger hospital ship. The medical care here was more comprehensive, and my shoulder wound was properly cleaned and dressed. The doctors told me I would recover fully, though it would take time. I spent most of my time reflecting on what had happened on Makin. We had fought bravely, but we were outnumbered and outgunned. The Americans had superior equipment, better training, and what seemed like endless supplies. Our weapons were outdated, our ammunition was limited, and our reinforcements were non-existent. I thought of Commander Ishikawa and the other officers who had drilled into us that death in battle was our only honorable path. But as I lay here, recovering under American care, I began to question that philosophy. Was death really preferable to survival? Was our cause really worth the sacrifice of so many lives? September 5th, 1943, I have been in the POW camp for nearly 2 weeks now. The conditions are far better than I expected. Clean barracks, regular meals, and medical care when needed. The other prisoners and I are treated with respect, though we are under constant guard. I have been allowed to keep my diary, which the Americans seem to find interesting. They have asked me many questions about my experiences on Makin, about my training, about my life in Japan. I answer as honestly as I can, though I sometimes censor my thoughts to avoid causing offense. The other prisoners and I have formed a sort of community, sharing stories and supporting each other through our injuries and homesickness. We talk of our families, of the lives we left behind, of the futures we hope for when the war ends. September 15th, 1943 today, I received word that my wife has been notified of my capture. The American Red Cross has forwarded a letter from her, asking for details about my condition and whereabouts. I was moved to tears reading her words. She had feared I was dead, and her relief at knowing I am alive was palpable. I wrote back, telling her only that I am alive and being treated well. I avoided mentioning my capture, not wanting to cause her additional worry. I promise to write again when I can, and to tell her more about my experiences. October 1st, 1943, the war continues to rage around us. News from the front is scarce, but we hear rumors of American advances across the Pacific. The Americans seem to be gaining momentum, pushing the Japanese forces back island by island. I sometimes wonder about the other soldiers from Makin, those who weren't captured or killed. Where are they now? Are they still fighting somewhere, or have they too been captured? I think of Sergeant Tanaka, who was wounded in the arm during the battle. I hope he survived, though I fear the worst. November 10th, 1943 today is my 28th birthday. In normal times, it would be a day off celebration with family and friends. Here in the POW camp, it is just another day. But the Americans have given us a small cake and allowed us to gather for a brief celebration. It was a thoughtful gesture, and I appreciated it more than I can say. I spent the day reflecting on my life, on the choices I had made, the path I had taken. I had joined the military believing in the cause, believing in the emperor, believing in the destiny of Japan. Now, as a prisoner of war, I found myself questioning those beliefs. Was it all worth it? Had I been misled? December 7th, 1943 today marks the second anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. It is a day of solemn reflection for all of us here in the camp. We held a small ceremony remembering those who had died in the attack and in the battles that followed. I thought about my own role in the war, about the men I had killed, the damage I had done. I had been taught that such actions were necessary for the glory of Japan, but now I wasn't so sure. The cost seemed too high, the sacrifice too great. January 1st, 1944, a new year has begun, and with it, a sense of hope the war continues, but there are signs that it may be ending soon. The Americans are advancing rapidly across the Pacific, and the Japanese forces are in full retreat. I have been allowed to take classes here in the camp, English language, history, mathematics. The education has been enlightening, opening my eyes to perspectives I had never considered before. I have learned about American democracy, about the value of human life, about the importance of peace. February 15th, 1944, today, I received another letter from my wife. She tells me that our daughter Sakura is growing up fast, that she asks about me every day. She says that life in our village is difficult, with so many men gone to war, but that they are managing as best they can. Her words filled me with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Joy at knowing my family is safe and well, sorrow at being so far away and unable to be with them. I wrote back, promising to return home when the war ends, to be the husband and father they deserve. March 10th, 1944, the news from the front is increasingly grim for Japan. The Americans have taken several more islands, and the Japanese Navy has suffered heavy losses. It seems clear that the war is entering its final phase. I have been speaking with some of the American guards, sharing stories and perspectives. They have been open and honest, answering my questions about their lives, their families, their reasons for fighting. I have come to see them not as enemies, but as individuals with their own beliefs and values. April 5th, 1944, today marks 1 year since the Battle of Makin. I spent the day reflecting on that day. The fear, the chaos, the loss. I thought of the men who had died, both Japanese and American. I thought of the families they had left behind, the lives that had been cut short. I realized then that war is not about glory or honor. It is about loss, about the destruction of lives, the shattering of families, the waste of potential. The Battle of Makin, like all battles, was a tragedy for all involved. May 15th, 1944, I have been given a new assignment in the camp, helping to organize the library and teach English to other prisoners. It is a welcome change from the routine of daily life, and it allows me to contribute in a meaningful way. I have been reading voraciously, histories, novels, philosophy books. The more I read, the more I questioned the beliefs I had held so strongly before the war. I am beginning to see that there are other ways to live, other ways to think, other ways to believe. June 6, 1944, today, the Americans launched a massive invasion of Normandy in Europe. The news spread quickly through the camp, and there was a palpable sense of excitement among the prisoners. It seems clear now that the war is in its final stages, and that the Allies are gaining the upper hand. I thought about what this means for Japan. How much longer can we hold out against such overwhelming force? How many more lives must be lost before this senseless war ends? July 4th, 1944, today is American Independence Day. The camp held a celebration with speeches, music, and games. I was asked to say a few words about my experiences, and I spoke about the importance of peace and understanding between nations. After the celebration, one of the American officers approached me. "You've changed since you arrived," he said. "You see things differently now." I nodded. "War changes everyone," I replied, "but I think I see more clearly now. I see that we are all human, with the same hopes and fears, the same desires for peace and security." August 17th, 1944, today marks 1 year since the Battle of Makin. It is hard to believe that a year has passed since that fateful day. So much has changed since then, for me, for Japan, for the world. I have been transferred to a new POW camp in the continental United States, where I will have access to better educational opportunities. I am looking forward to this new chapter in my life, to the chance to learn and grow and prepare for my eventual return to Japan. As I prepare to leave this camp, I think about the men I fought with on Makin, about their courage, their sacrifice, their unwavering belief in the cause. I honor their memory, even as I question the cause for which they died. I think about the Americans I fought against, about their bravery, their discipline, their commitment to their mission. I respect them as soldiers, even as I disagree with their government's policies. I think about my family, about the life I left behind, about the future I hope to build when I return. I long for the day when I can hold my wife and daughter again, when I can resume the life that was interrupted by war. Most of all, I think about the cost of this war, Abut's lives lost, the families destroyed, the future shattered. I think about the hatred and mistrust that fueled this conflict, about the failure of leaders on both sides to find a peaceful solution. The Battle of Makin was just one small engagement in a vast and terrible war. But it changed my life forever. It taught me the true cost of conflict, the preciousness of peace, the importance of understanding between peoples. As I look to the future, I hope that the lessons of this war will not be forgotten. I hope that the world will find a way to resolve its differences without resorting to violence, that the horrors of war will never be repeated. And I hope that one day I can return to my home, to my family, to a world at peace. That is my greatest wish, my most fervent prayer.